In a quiet working-class neighborhood of England, fear spread not because of a stranger from the shadows, but because no one imagined the truth. The crimes shocked police, the media, and an entire nation, not only for what happened, but for who was responsible. She was young. She blended in, and her case forced the world to ask a question it had never faced before. What happens when childhood itself collides with serious crime? This is the story of Mary Flora Bell, a case that changed criminal law, psychology, and how society understands responsibility forever. To understand the Mary Bell case, we must first understand the world she lived in. Britain in the late 1960s was a country in transition industrial neighborhoods, crowded housing, limited social services, and growing awareness of mental health issues that were still poorly understood. Children often roamed freely, supervision was minimal, and early warning signs of trauma were frequently overlooked. It was in this environment that a series of incidents would unfold, shocking the nation and leaving lasting scars on the justice system. Mary Flora Bell was born in 1957 in Newcastle upon Tyne. From a very early age, her life was marked by instability and neglect. Historical accounts describe a childhood surrounded by emotional turmoil, inconsistent care, and exposure to harmful situations no child should experience. These early experiences did not excuse later actions, but they became critical in understanding how such a young person could become involved in serious criminal behavior. At the time, little support existed for children showing extreme behavioral distress, and warning signs were often dismissed or misunderstood. In 1968, the community was shaken by disturbing events involving very young victims. The atmosphere changed overnight. Parents kept children indoors. Neighbors watched one another with suspicion, and fear replaced the sense of normalcy. Police initially searched for an adult suspect, because the idea that someone so young could be responsible seemed impossible. The investigation moved slowly, complicated by misleading clues and false assumptions that delayed the truth from coming into focus. As investigators examined the scenes and reviewed witness accounts, strange inconsistencies began to emerge. Some clues appeared deliberately placed, almost as if someone was trying to draw attention or confuse authorities. Notes and small acts of provocation suggested a disturbing need for recognition. These details didn't fit the profile of a typical adult offender, leaving police puzzled. Slowly, suspicion began to turn toward someone no one expected, someone who had been present but invisible. When Mary Bell was arrested, the country was stunned. The idea of a child standing trial for such serious crimes was unprecedented in modern British history. The courtroom was filled with tension, confusion, and debate. The trial focused not only on what had happened, but on how responsibility should be judged when the accused is so young. Psychologists testified about emotional development, trauma, and behavior. The public was divided between outrage, disbelief, and deep discomfort. Mary Bell's case became a turning point in criminal psychology. Experts emphasized that children do not think, process consequences, or understand morality the same way adults do, especially when raised in chaotic environments. This didn't remove accountability, but it reshaped how the justice system approached punishment, rehabilitation, and long-term care. For the first time, a nation was forced to confront the reality that childhood trauma could intersect with extreme behavior in ways that demanded new legal frameworks. Mary Bell was convicted and given a sentence that reflected both the seriousness of the crimes and her age. She spent years in secure institutions focused on rehabilitation rather than punishment alone. Over time, she received psychological treatment and education. Her identity later became protected by law, highlighting society's shift towards safeguarding rehabilitation and preventing lifelong public punishment for crimes committed in childhood. The media coverage surrounding the case raised difficult ethical questions. How much should the public know? Can a child ever escape a past like this? The intense attention contributed to ongoing debates about press responsibility, victim dignity, and the right to privacy. The case ultimately influenced reforms in how juvenile offenders are reported on, setting legal precedents that continue to shape media law today. Decades later, the name Mary Bell remains one of the most controversial in crime history. Not because of sensationalism, but because the case forced society to evolve. It changed how courts handle young offenders, how psychologists study childhood trauma, and how communities recognize early warning signs. It stands as a painful reminder that prevention, support, and early intervention are as critical as justice itself. The story of Mary Flora Bell is not just a crime story. It is a lesson about responsibility, childhood, and the consequences of ignoring trauma. It shocked the world not only for what happened, but for how it changed everything that came after.